Welcome to another episode of The Conscious Builder Live. I'm Casey Gray, the founder of The Conscious Builder, and today I am excited to have Jennifer Lynn Walker on with us. Jennifer, thanks for being with us.
Hey everyone. Thank you for having me.
You will soon find out how fun Jennifer is. So, Jennifer has been a green enthusiast for 28 years and is the founder of Jolly Green Homes. She's deeply committed to healthy living, alternative green ways of renovating, and recommending eco-friendly resources and products. She's been a real estate broker for over 15 years, and I just found out that in Quebec they call them brokers, not agents. So she's been a real estate broker for over 15 years and also founded Montreal Real Estate Investors Group in 2010, which now has over 1,400 members. And she holds monthly meetings and workshops helping newbie investors learn more about real estate investing. She's also a regular contributor to local paper and has written over 300 articles on real estate. That's a lot. She's obviously very busy. And anyways, on today's episode, we're going to get into a few things. We're going to be talking about how her local market has been affected by the pandemic, green real estate, why now is the time to renovate and not sell. Also, we're going to flip things around a little bit because Jennifer has plans to turn her garage into an apartment. So she's going to be asking me questions, and that's how we originally connected. So anyways, I'm excited to kind of switch roles on this.
Yes, yes. Me too. I'm going to be the client with all my questions.
So let's start with the obvious and COVID-19 and everything that's happening. You know, how is that affecting your world? And maybe both business, you know, on the real estate side, we talked a little bit about that, but also personally, how have things changed for you?
Well, when it all first went down, definitely listings went down. The stats showed like about 60 to 70%, and everything was on a hold. In fact, we weren't allowed doing our job. And then all of a sudden we could do our job, but it was very restricted. It was only if you already had a house to sell, could you sell it, and only to a buyer who was going to be homeless by July 31st. And it's been, I guess it's been about 2 weeks now that everything is lifted. So we are allowed to resume business as usual. And I thought, well, it's going to start off slow and people are going to take their time, but it's not like that. So for those who don't know the Montreal market, before all this happened, we were a strong sellers market. Like, for the last 3 years, listings have gone down and prices and volume has gone up. So there's hardly anything to buy. And, we're getting, 3 offers, 20 offers, sometimes 24, 30 offers. So today
That's wild.
I know, sorry. Yes, it is wild. And so I just listed a property in a prominent area in Montreal, NDG, and within a half an hour, I already have 3 visits. Just to give you an example, I listed another property yesterday, a duplex, and I've got 4 visits within 48 hours. And I have a client who wanted to look at a 5-plex a little bit further east Montreal. I called the broker because I couldn't get a visit. And we use a texting system, and it said that all the time slots were booked. And I've never heard of it being booked up. So I called him. He says, we have 100 visits, and they have over 13 offers so far. So I thought things were going to slow down, but it's not the case.
So how are visits working? Like, are you still doing physical visits, or are they more like virtual tours?
We're doing, well, no one's, they tried to get the virtual tour thing going, but I mean, really, who's buying a house without going in it? Like, no one. So that it didn't last long. So we are going inside, we're doing the mask, we're doing the gel. We have to wipe everything down, one person at a time. I don't let anybody touch anything. So if they want the door opened or drawers, I do it myself. And they don't suggest open houses. So no one is doing any open houses. So
Doesn't sound like you really need open houses, by the way things are going.
well, as well, it does help a lot because for every visit, if they're booked on different days, the seller has to clean their house and get it all in order. Where an open house, you can get a lot of people in at once. And same for me, it's time efficiency, where now I have to book, say, every half hour or every hour for a visit, and it could take days and days. So I have to keep the timelines open for an offer to make sure everybody has a chance to see the house. So that's the difference.
So is this like consistent across Montreal? Like this type of like is it always been like that?
Yes, in the last 3 years, definitely,
Hmm.
definitely. And condos were slow 3 years ago. In fact, they took a bit of a slump about 5 years ago. People started losing money, but now they're back up in the running. Time to sell has gone down, and prices are still climbing.
And do you think that things are going to continue? Because I feel like I was sharing before, I was on a I'm part of this group called the Private Investment Club, and which is a real estate investment club based in Toronto actually, and they're making predictions that things are not like right now. We haven't seen much of an impact. There's been a lot of support, right? The government's supporting, the banks are kind of making things work, but they're predicting that things are going to change in the next 6 months or so, just because it can't stay like that, right? If the economy, people need to go out and spend money, they need jobs. If people are losing jobs, or businesses realize that they don't need as many employees potentially, so people start getting laid off, and who knows what's going to happen, right? They're kind of predicting that things like that are going to be happening. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I get asked that a lot, and I always say the same thing. I don't know. I don't know. It's not my area of expertise. And I mean, who knows? Who knows? I'm sure with all the stats, I agree with what you're saying. I would assume that they would start slowing down. Do I want to say to people, well, you shouldn't be buying anything right now? And, things don't turn out the same way. So I just, do my job and keep my mouth shut and let people read what they need to read to feel confident to buy or not buy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And depends what they're buying for, right? This is part of a bunch of investors that were, looking to make money on their properties too, right? So it's kind of a different versus somebody maybe looking for their home for their family.
Exactly. Exactly.
Uh, what about, do you have any experience in the commercial real estate world? Are you seeing anything there, or have you heard anything happening there?
Not big commercial. With my real estate investors group, I do a lot of workshops for newbies. So we're going up to, we try and stay in the residential. So we go up to about an eightplex. And so, no, I don't do the big commercial buildings.
So what is Jolly Green Homes? Tell us what it is, and how you are. Well, you've been doing this for a while.
Yes, yes.
Tell us what you're
Okay.
doing. Share all the exciting things.
Okay, so this is my ultimate passion. I have been a green enthusiast for 28 years, and it started when I lived in BC. And I mean, they had grocery stores there the size of Provigo. Where you don't have Provigo, the big grocery stores.
Yep.
And here they had nothing. And so right away, I was, swept into organics, healthy living, and it really interested me because I started eating healthy and it started changing my life. And I was like, well, what else is there out there? And I started reading and learning about the effects of chemicals on the planet, in our bodies, like first coming off on a health sense and then then learning about the effects on the planet. And it's developed into quite a passion for me. So because of this, not that I'm schooled in any way, like going to university or college on the matter, but I live it every day and I read it. And I mean, all my friends say, Jennifer, I've never met anybody who knows as much as you do. And it's a good thing and a bad thing because, you're trying to live a normal life, but also there's the hypocrisy of it all. It's like, yes, I still have a car and I still have a house. And if I really think green, we should all be living in teepees in the woods off, off grid, but that's not real. So I'm just educating people and helping people how they could start turning their lives around. So I put out videos, things like, if you buy frozen blueberries or dog containers, they come in the plastic, like they're like a hard Ziploc. And we tend
I,
to,
you talking about dog food? Sorry, I haven't bought
yeah,
dog food in a while. We
well,
used to have dogs
like,
quite a few years.
well, like it comes in like blueberries, frozen foods.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
The packaging where it looks like that really hard Ziploc, and you've got the advertising on, and a lot of people just throw them in the recycling. And it's just like, well, why buy Ziploc bags? Why go out and buy the brand Ziploc when you can just save these? It's like, you go buy yogurt and you've got the containers. Why go buy all these extra, Tupperware containers or plastic containers and, keep them for whatever you need them for when we could just reuse things that we buy, just little things like that. Because people are so overwhelmed. And I get that all the time, like, where do we start? Where do I start? And so I just, I don't want to force my views on anyone, but I go on Facebook, and when I hear somebody, oh, I want to buy a nice rug for my baby's room, where can I go? And I go, well, is it all natural? Because if it's not, it's going to off gas, and they're hormone disruptors. So it means, your baby's not able, and yourself too, if you're in the room, you're not able to produce the same hormones. So positive hormones like serotonin and, all those feel goods, the chemicals completely disrupt or partially disrupt. So just things like that. People aren't aware of the off-gassing of products. So hence green homes, green living is to create a harmonious home for ourselves, our family, our children, where we have less toxins and less chemicals, and also eating organics and, these types of things. Renovations, maintenance, I try and read as much as possible and pass on the information to my clients.
I love that you're doing that because, like, especially at the time now, it's become a lot more obvious, but the way we learn has changed. There's a lot of people, very knowledgeable people like yourself, who don't have the so-called certification. They went to university or college to learn this stuff. They're just living it, right? And then they're teaching it. And by teaching it, you become even better at doing it, right? That's kind of the way I like learning, because I'm just going to jump in and do it. And then I'm going to share what I've learned, as opposed to, I'm not one to like sit in a classroom. I was never a big fan of school to begin with. Hence why I got into construction. I'd rather just kind of go out there and take action and do it. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I love that you're doing that and putting this information out there. And I'm sure just by you doing it, you've learned even more, because now you have maybe questions coming back to you, and maybe some of them you don't know. So now you're forced to continue your learning.
Right. And do you feel, because this is how I feel too, I mean, just from my friends and people I'm meeting and just posts that I'm seeing on social media, that it's becoming more than a fad and a trend, but it's becoming a mindful, conscious lifestyle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It might be partly because of who we surround ourselves with, but um, I'm very much that's kind of the way we live, and we started this. My wife and I, say we, Natasha and I. Really, where it started to really hit us is when we found out that we were having a baby. And that's when we started to realize the effects. We started a lot of personal development stuff before that, but as soon as we found out that we were having our not so little guy anymore, he's almost 7, Sullivan, you start thinking about him and how your decisions will affect him, right? So he's sleeping on like the most expensive mattress in the house because we went for the organic and local and all that mattress, right? But we never did it for ourselves because we haven't bought a mattress since then. But things like that, and you start thinking about off gas, and you start thinking about the food. We were thinking about food before that point, but we even started to realize you become more conscious of these side effects. So
Right.
one thing I've become very aware of is how just being more in tune with like my own body. So it's not just about the environment, and the environment meaning, that rug that you were talking about, or the paint, or whatever it may be, but it's also what we put into our into our body, into our minds, and the people that we surround ourselves with too, right? These are all things that will have some sort of effect on our consciousness, whether we are aware of them or not. Big thing right now, COVID-19, we are all being trained subconsciously to interact differently,
Mm-hmm.
because we've now, going into our fourth month of this now, we have created habits that we are likely not aware of. So, uh, yes, I am very much, hence why we call it the conscious builder. So I'm seeing a lot of that.
Yes. Yes. And the habits, are you referring to positive habits like everyone's cooking from scratch now? There's less shopping going on, and what can I reuse at home instead of going out and buying?
Well, some of them can be positive, some of them can be negative, right? Some of us can be watching the news a lot more and feeding into the fear, right? As opposed to others like myself, I stay away from news. However, the if there is somebody who's watching it consistently, then there's a good chance that the way that they're thinking is very different than the way I'm thinking. As an example, um, yes, we're eating more. Like, that's a habit that we've created. We walk to the grocery store now. It's a good 20-minute walk from where we are, but we make a point to do it now, especially because the weather's nice. But we never really did it before. We'll grab the wagon. We'll say, sorry, everyone's coming. No 6-year-old ever wants to go for a walk, but I'm like, well, hop on the wagon. I'll pull you if you want, or take your bike. Right? Those are habits that we're starting to create. There could be somebody else who's sitting in front of Netflix the whole time. So I guess it all depends. Hopefully, and that's what I'm saying, hopefully we're creating good habits, but I can only speak for myself.
Yeah. I think also too, I'm hearing a lot of vegetable gardens being built. I mean, my neighbor across the street built this gigantic one. I just dug a big hole to build one. A couple of my friends have done the same thing. And I think a lot of people are now going, oh, okay, like what's going to happen if this continues or happens again? How can I be more self-reliant? And yeah, so that's a positive change as well. And it's definitely more eco and environmental friendly, which I love.
Yeah, that's another good point, actually. Do you see any change in kind of what people are looking for on the real estate market? Because maybe they're looking for something that has the ability to put in a garden, or something that has a little bit more space, and they're realizing that maybe they don't need to live in the city because, well, now they can probably work from home as opposed to working downtown.
Well, because all this is brand new, for that type of side effect, I think we're going to have to wait. I can see that happening.
Hmm.
It hasn't happened exactly yet, but in the past, I mean, I've listed homes, considered green homes, where I've had a client follow the lead, and there wasn't a lot of interest in the green aspect of it, and which I was surprising. Quebec, Montreal, we're not quite there yet. I know Toronto is a lot more ahead. BC is like eons and eons ahead, but it is catching on. In our Greater Montreal Real Estate Board, we do have a little box that you could check off to consider your home a green home, but there still isn't any regulation to be, what does that mean? I did research on it, calling them, and they said, well, it means nothing right now. There's no
It's
standardization.
just a checkbox.
It's just a checkbox. So, I mean, you can actually do a search in Montreal, and I'm sure probably in the Ontario real estate boards as well, to search for a green home. But, it could mean just, bamboo flooring. Because there's no regulation, you'd really have to do the research. And so there's different types of green homes too, as far as I'm concerned. There's how it's built, and also too, then I've had a client who had a chemical sensitivity disorder. So finding her a house was a whole different standard, because it had to do with, she didn't want any renovations, no vinyl siding, no basement if possible. The seller couldn't do any cleaning, especially with chemical products. There couldn't be any paints or raid or anything in the basement or garage. So there was so much criteria, and So just, talking about and calling brokers. And so, getting that conversation going. But, there's nothing official.
Are there many other brokers that are thinking the way you're thinking, or are a lot of them just kind of set in the old ways still?
Set in the old way. And okay, to be fair, I have done, research because I'm always looking to see who else is out there. And, not many come up. I mean, I do talk to brokers and, personally themselves in their own lives, they are, there's people trying to make a difference in their own lives with their families. But as far as business goes, they talk about, recycling and, bringing a travel mug with them, things like that, but not a full scale.
Mm. Yeah, I find like that's how we're going to have the way we're going to see any big shift is if something's required on by law, essentially, right? So at one point they were talking about here is making it mandatory for people to get ERS ratings, so the energy rating of homes before you sell it. But a lot of realtors, from what I understand, I don't know, I'm not on the board, but from the stories that I was hearing was there was pushback because they didn't want to do that, right? They didn't think there'd be value in it, right? But personally, I'm like, well, there is value because especially now that you have a lot of the same houses, everything looks the same. If one performs better, well, that's a selling feature in my mind, right? So then all of a sudden people start thinking a little bit differently and making their home a little bit more energy efficient. And those baby steps you had mentioned earlier could actually start to stack up pretty quickly.
Yeah, I love that idea. I haven't heard any word about it here in Quebec. But I get the pushback because a lot of real estate brokers, I mean, we want to sell the houses as is. And I'll not that I'm throwing me in the mix, but most brokers, they're in it for the business. They want to sell. And if they're doing those types of tests, then the transparency is there. And maybe the house, if you get a low number, then does that mean the house is worth less? So there's all these other issues that come up. So I could see the pushback in that. However, personally, I think it's a fabulous idea.
Yeah.
I love it. In fact, what I do is, I don't know, here they have the blower test, right? And that's what they do. So in Quebec, I think I'm not 100% positive on my numbers, but I had it done on my house before we renovated it. So it tests the air leakage everywhere and it gives, like you're saying, the number, right? And I think it was only $50 or it was 100, 200 and you get money back. But anyways, the whole point is that you get the number and then he gives you a recommendation of what you could do, right? And it's a lot of caulking, first of all. And caulking is cheap, but it really seals the home. And then there was, extra insulation here and there. We were renovating, so we were insulating the basement. And then we got $700 back from the government
Did you
because
do
we,
the blower door test again after?
yes, exactly. And we were a higher number. And then we got the money back. So, for any of you who are listening, who is interested in, doing renovations, especially when it comes to roof, insulation in your roof, your windows, insulating your house, exterior siding, redoing your basement, anything that's going to help the energy efficiency of your house. In Quebec, you do get money back.
So that's good. So they're not doing anything here. I think Enbridge might be doing something here still. I'd have to double check that. At least they were. I believe it's still going on. So just to give our viewers and listeners a little bit more of information. So the blower door test does test the air leakage of a home at 50 kilopascals per hour. Typically is how they do it. So that basically simulates 50-kilometer-an-hour winds on all four sides of your house, and then they can do a where they will decompress your home and then compress it. So it's air kind of coming in and air going out, because there's a difference, and they take the average of the two because you have vents, for example, like a dryer vent or a range hood vent that has flaps on it. And when you suck air into the house, those flaps will close, but then when you blow air out, they'll open up. And you can get mechanical vents that make a home more airtight, right? So those are things that you really get into when you get into these really green homes. But that gives you a little bit more background on that. But to add to that too, I don't think people realize the importance of air sealing. So I do want to emphasize that, because insulation is extremely important, but insulation without a good air barrier is useless. It's kind of like wearing a big
Mm-hmm.
down jacket and having the zipper open and standing and looking at the wind. It's not going to do anything. It doesn't matter how big the jacket is, right? So if you are renovating or building a home, if whoever's doing the work needs to understand the difference between an air barrier and a vapor barrier, for example, because there is a difference. They can be the same thing, but they are different, because the air barrier is what really gives you a comfortable home. Same with windows, right? When you feel cold air at a window, that's convection. That's because your window doesn't perform well. That's not necessarily an air leak. That's just understanding the performance of windows. So make sure your home's airtight, triple glazed windows, and make sure your contractor knows what they're talking about. But anyways, side note, just because I do like to emphasize the importance of that, we kind of put the emphasis on comfort now, because if we aim for a comfortable home, by default, you're going to have an energy efficient home.
Exactly. Okay, so this is where I'm going to start turning the tables. So my question is this, and this, so what I've learned and what I know for the last say 15 years, and you could give me your thoughts on this and update my thought and opinion, is that it's better to insulate your home really well than to have solar panels as far as energy of the home. Is that still true because of the expense of panels and also the maintenance of panels and the price? So it's better to first of all, if you say had a choice, is to re-insulate your house than to get solar panels.
It depends on what the goal is. What's
Okay,
the goal? Because I understand where you're coming from is everything in Quebec, for the most part, is electric heat.
right.
Here in Ontario, it's not. Hydroelectricity is very expensive in comparison to natural gas. So solar panels might not make sense if you're heating your hot water in your house with natural gas.
Okay,
So
right.
when it comes to new homes, I tell people put money into the envelope, meaning the insulation, the air sealing, the windows, and then you
Exactly.
can put a smaller system in. And then if you can offset your costs with electricity, then or sorry with solar panels, then amazing. So out of all the homes we've built since we've been in business over 10 years now, only one of them has had natural gas. Actually, they've all been fossil fuel free, which is kind of unheard of here in Ontario because of the cost. But since we're making the homes so comfortable and energy efficient to begin with, the cost ends up being about the same to operate. But the homeowners, there's personal decision. They felt better about not burning natural gas, but then they could actually offset their bills with solar panels if and when they decided to install them. You can't offset your natural gas bill.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long would it, and I guess maybe I'm answering my own question here by, maybe it depends on the size of the square footage of the home, but how long does it take in general to pay them off?
Now I haven't looked at it recently. I think the most recent one showed like a 10 to 15 year payback, just based on net metering. But it's not really that long, right? When you think of an investment and return on investment, that's still a fairly high percentage. But solar panels are getting better and better, right? So it kind of depends. Um, I'm kind of the mind too. That's why we aim for comfort, is that because technology is getting so good, solar panels will continue to get better. Eventually, it doesn't matter how poorly built, or it could just be an old home, right? An old stone house that you can't do anything with. Eventually, solar panels will be so good that you can offset all of your costs to run that,
Right.
right?
And have you heard any news about Tesla's glass shingle system that is supposedly out on the market? Have you heard anything about that coming to Canada?
Last I looked into it was about a year ago when we were looking at a house for it, but they didn't have anything for it in Canada yet. One of the issues, from what I understood, is that uh, for fire. So if you had a fire and a firefighter had to go through the roof of a house, they need to know which panels are
Oh.
not uh, basically generating electricity. So
Oh, I never thought about that.
yeah,
Holy, imagine.
so
Oh,
those are things that we start to think about after the fact, right? So I'm not sure where they're at, but like I said, it's been about a year since I've looked into it. I think there's other products coming out too, right? And there's going to be products like even siding. There's windows that are generating solar power,
yeah,
right? So
right.
there's all sorts of like things that are changing. That's why I think at the end of the day, it still comes down to comfort and maybe even and ideally reducing your carbon footprint, right? So using materials that are not harming the environment in the production either.
And do you find, so personally, I find in the last 10 years a growth, but not significant enough where I can go to a store, a green building store. Like it's not here, anyways, it's not significant enough. When do you think that we're going to start seeing, say, mini Home Depots opening up with, or it being incorporated a lot more into the big box stores where it's all alternative products like the glues, the drywalls, the insulation, the paints, and it being prominent.
I have no idea. Right? I have no idea. But
Me neither,
this
but
is
I
what
want it to happen.
this is what I'll say. So I did a video that was released this week. Actually, I think it was just released yesterday. Anyways, I have to ask Brian on that one. But essentially, my quick video was you vote with your wallet. So anybody who's out there purchasing stuff, whatever it is that you're purchasing, whether it's food, whether it's a product for your house, whether it's a service, every time you spend $1, you are voting. So if you are going to spend money on products that harm the environment, harm yourself, harm your kids, harm your whatever, that is what you're voting for. If you grab that junk food off the shelf at the grocery store will continue to stock it because obviously there's a demand for it, right? So until we start to have this consciousness shift fairly globally, there's not really going to be a big change because businesses will just continue to create what is generating revenue, right? And we need the revenue because we need the economy and people need jobs and so forth, right? So to some extent, you do need people to step up and just do it. But at the same time, if there's no business model for it and the business can't make money, then obviously they can't stay in business and, it's hard. So either
Yeah.
they need to charge more for the product, which we do a lot of the products that we look at, they just need to charge more because the demand is lower. And that's where I feel like there needs to be literally like laws or something put in place. That's the only time like COVID-19 hit. It's not a law, but all of a sudden people are used to this new change. It literally just happened, but we are now used to this new normal that is setting in. Taxes get raised, people kick and scream, and then they forget about it and it becomes a new normal. So if new regulations are put in, then all of a sudden we could probably see change happen.
Yeah. I call it your purchase power.
Yeah.
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 I always tell people, well, they're saying, well, what do I buy? I say, well, just look at the label. If you could read the ingredients, like, what is it made from? Where is it made? What are you going to do afterwards with it? Whether it's clothes or food, like how long can you consume it for? And what are you going to do with it after it's done? Is it biodegradable? Is it recyclable? Can you buy it secondhand?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to actually buy it, before you even go that there's so much going on, but it's, yeah, changing the mindset. I love what you just said. I'm totally on board with that.
And just having fun with it too, right? Like a lot of our it's kind of funny because we get so used to having things instantly, right? Like you were saying earlier before we were recording that you went to IKEA and like everyone was just having a blast in there, right? And there's no social distancing happening, right? People like that IKEA because they can get stuff right away. Um, we got used to Amazon Prime. You get it in a couple of days. Now all of a sudden it's taking a little bit longer, and then you're okay with it, right? But it's almost like you think twice. Like, well, if I can't get it in 2 days, I'm not going to order it. But you can have fun with it. Where I'm saying is like what you see behind me. That cabinet was actually, I think it's at least 80 years old, and we just refinished it from my wife's grandparents. The desk that you can't see right now is a table that I found at a garage sale that was sitting in someone's garden shed from a 100-plus-year-old house, right? And I just refinished it, and the
Love it.
table over here is made from an old wire reel, right? And we just bought some legs for it. There's a concrete table. So obviously I have the skill and I have the people. I didn't make all the furniture in here. I have, a team to help with this stuff. And to some extent, if we got to stay busy, we'll do cool things like this. But those are things that you can just have fun doing now, maybe because the kids are at home, right? And why not have a little bit of fun and doing, finding an old cabinet and just refinishing it. Obviously find a good product, but to refinish it with. But there's things out there that are in the big box stores. And if you're just conscious about what you purchase, then maybe that Home Depot will turn into that store that you're talking about.
Yeah. Think cool, unique, and fun. And you don't need the skills. I have an old chair and I sourced out hemp fabric and brought it to somebody to refinish it because I don't know how to upholster. But
Mm.
it was just a matter of, I could have bought a brand new chair, or could have went to a fabric store. But I thought, no, I'm going to source out organic cotton or hemp or something sustainable. And then, I'm bringing it to the upholsterer anyway. So it's just to shift the mindset. We have this knee jerk reaction to buy and to do something. It's just like, just take a breath, be mindful and take a breath and go, okay, what else is there out there? What is there green? Is there somebody I can ask who may know better than me, But
Yeah.
by the way, I love your green commode back there. It's absolutely
Thanks.
stunning. It's stunning. Well, that's my whole house. I mean, you laugh. My whole house is probably 95% secondhand store stuff, or
Okay.
finds, or people giving me, or vintage places, garage sales. I just find it unique. It just makes a unique product.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, you get to make your home your own at that point, right? So it's part of the
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, and but you're not getting satisfaction right away. It's that mindset. You have to wait a bit, because you're not going and buying a house and furnishing your whole stuff, your whole place with these products. It's over time you're implementing things here and there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be another positive thing that's happening with everything in the world right now is that we're starting to become more patient again.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I'm terrible at this. I'll be the first to admit I am not patient. I like to just get things done. And even if I am doing my own projects, it's like it can't be done quick enough. I just like being efficient and getting things done. But it's definitely helped with the patience and just double thinking, what do you need? What are you really after? Right. So
Yeah.
what is the reason why? That question that every 5-year-old knows so well. Why?
Yeah,
We start
exactly.
we start stop asking that. So you should
Okay. Yes, we
show
should.
show show a little bit about what you're thinking and share your vision for your garage.
Okay, so I have some really great questions. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take you out to my garage. So you got to wait 1 second because it's going to be a little bit dark. And then we are going to go out. It's beautiful out now, not like last week was absolutely stunning. So, okay, so here is my project. And I think it was built in the 70s, and it's on slab. It's a 5-inch slab, and I'm not sure yet if there is a rebar in the slab. But the idea is to where the door is to create another window and put the door on the right of it, and create like a guest house. And it's about 380 square feet. And I think I don't want to go too far out, and you'll lose me with the internet. But yeah, the big thing is bringing plumbing to it is the biggest expense, of course. But for me, it's about the interior. How can I go as green as possible? And for me, it's not so much the finishing materials, it's the systems. And so I'd love to talk about compostable toilets. I don't know if you know much about it. If you don't, no big deal. Or also hot water on demand. I'm just going to plug back in. Okay, so just to ease the plumbing system, I was thinking about composting toilets and the hot water on demand.
Why do you need to ease? Oh, it's just so you don't have to run plumbing out there?
Well, I think I still have to because I want to do laundry and there'll be a kitchen sink, bathroom sink. It is going to be connected to the house and not the municipality. And so, well, also too, I would assume hot water on demand and the composting toilet would be greener. I don't know. I haven't done much research on it, so I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I'm I'm not as familiar with composting toilets. I'm
Okay,
aware of them. I can't say I've ever really done much other than, family cottage that had it,
right.
and that it's a real pain in the butt, no pun intended. But
Yeah.
the the if you're renting it out, it's probably going to be hard to rent out with a composting toilet, for example.
Right.
So if you're already going to have to run plumbing out there anyways. It's not necessarily going to be that much more difficult to stick the 3-inch drain in for your toilet. Now, in terms of it being greener, or probably is. I don't know what the municipality system is like in Montreal. In Ottawa, when we get too much rain, it overflows into the river. But I guess, yeah, that would be something that maybe look into, but up to you, I guess, at that course, at that point.
Okay. Okay. And so let me see what else I have here for my questions. Insulation. So what would be the greenest type of insulation right now?
So if you can stay away from foam, so the person to talk to is Chris Magwood. We had him on a few weeks ago. But staying away from foam and concrete, for example, will have a huge impact on the carbon footprint of any home.
Oh,
So I'm a fan of mineral wool. Yes, it's not necessarily renewable. It's made from rock, but it doesn't have any fire retardants. All the fire retardants that would come with like a fiberglass insulation, for example. Now, a better option would be cellulose, right? So there's actually a person in your area, I believe, although I think his email bounced back recently when I tried to contact him. But like a dense pack cellulose, which is essentially recycled newspaper, that would probably be one of your best bets for insulation. There's also like mushroom insulation. I forget what it's called, but
right.
essentially insulation made from mushrooms and stuff like that. But dense pack celluloses and loose fill cellulose, like used in an attic, is used regularly, and there wouldn't be any issues with like building inspectors, for example, or finding contractors who do the work.
Yeah, I've heard about the cellulose, and also I heard they're even doing like jeans,
Yeah. I think
wool
there might even
jeans.
be you might see jeans sometimes in part of the cellulose. Like if you
Yeah,
look through it, you can
that's
actually
right.
find the newspaper clippings and like denim, essentially.
Okay. And so, as far as efficiency, what would be the thickness that you'd want? Say, what would be ideal for the walls?
That would be an answer. I would always recommend bringing an energy advisor in because they'll tell
Right.
you, right? They can model the home for you or the garage or apartment, whatever you're going to
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah.
So they can model it and they can play around with the insulation value. They can also play around with the air tightness, right? So it depends on what you get for air tightness will affect the amount of insulation. I always recommend just having a target, right? So if your target is like net zero energy, if you actually wanted to get the certification, which is, I don't know if they have it in Quebec. I'm assuming it's across Canada, but I know Quebec's like its own world. um, but I knew if there is a building standard that makes sense there, I'd probably just set that as the target, and then the energy modeler would be able to tell you what's required in order to hit that. I think the bigger issue you're going to have is you already have a slab
Yes.
that does not have any insulation in it, so the comfort will be greatly reduced just because the floor will be so cold unless you have room to maybe put foam on top of it. Or once again, if you want to stay away from foam, something like mineral wool, like the rock wool, has a dense board that you can definitely put on top of a floor and put something on top of it. So there's a few options there.
Well, I was thinking, because it's such a small space, of putting radiant floor heating throughout the entire um, apartment.
Yep. So if you are going to do that, but you still want to put insulation below the radiant,
Okay.
right?
Oh,
Or
because
else
you'd lose the heat. Oh, very smart. Very smart. Okay. And I just want to go back to this energy guy. So that's a thing you can, and this is very interesting because I love this. So anyone who's doing renovations who really want to make sure they're doing it properly and efficiently, to have an energy guy come in or girl come in and help them out.
Yeah, in this world, we call it the integrated design process, IDP, right? So you have your contractor, your
Yeah.
energy advisor, and then your designer or architect. Sometimes they're the same person, and then the homeowner. Everybody has to work together, and then everybody brings different skills and knowledge and information to the project.
Okay. Okay. Now, this happened to one of my clients. We were looking at a house on slab, and with the infrared, it showed that it was losing heat where the walls were touching the slab. And it was said by one of the people, they said, oh, you should never have a slab home. You should always have a basement. And I thought, well, that's not true because it's greener to have a slab, from my understanding. But then is there some I guess my question is that normal, or is there a way of reducing it so that there isn't any I guess the moisture, right? Because if it's cooler at the bottom, there's going to be a bit more moisture happening. Is it possible to make it consistent all the way around?
So it was probably losing heat because there's air leakage. They probably
Okay.
didn't seal it, right? They just stuck the wall on top of the slab on some maybe a gasket of some sort that's not airtight whatsoever.
Right.
That's probably why the thermal imaging was showing something, my guess. But if there's no insulation under the slab, it's going to be cold. So one thing you could do with your garage, for example, is going back to that jacket analogy. We're actually about to do this on a big renovation that we're about to start. It's actually a brick building, not even a wood building, and we're chopping the eaves off the roof. And we're going to be adding insulation to the outside of the building and going up over the roof, and then doing new eaves and kind of framing everything back out again. So essentially, we're putting a jacket around the whole house and zipping it up, right? We're making sure that we zip it up, and then putting the makeup and stuff on the outside of it.
That's awesome.
So you
And
could do that with your garage, but
okay.
you'd be like, for example, you could dig down and get it down below the slab. It helps, but that's a way that you could not necessarily lose square footage in your house or in the space, and add insulation to the walls and make it more airtight.
Yeah, just wrap it on the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Call
would be
it,
really
there's a
smart.
term for it. It's called like a chainsaw retrofit. You basically chainsaw, we don't use chainsaws, but uh, chainsaw off the eaves and basically wrap it, the whole house in insulation and tape it all up.
Okay, okay, I'm going to do more research on that. I love that idea because in such a small space, that's one of the biggest, issues or problems is you don't want to lose just an extra, 4 inches makes a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So for a place like that, is it worth going solar at all? Or should, for the money, it's not worth it, and maybe put more of my money and time in insulation?
Well, solar can always be added after. It's not going to be on a separate meter, is it?
No.
Yeah. So you could always put the solar on your house, right? Essentially, you have a separate apartment, but it's still part of the same meter. So you could add the solar panels at any point.
Okay. Okay.
I wouldn't do it just for that project. I would do it for your whole house.
Okay. And one last question, because I'm just getting started. I'm sure I'll have more questions later. For gray water.
Mhm.
And now all I know is everyone's putting these, the big barrels to catch the water, and then they're doing their gardening. Is there any way, and not just for, I'm also talking about my little place, but also in general, is there any new product or new fashion or new way to trap the gray water and reuse it in the house?
So gray water is different than rainwater. Are you talking rainwater or gray water?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, I guess at first I was talking rainwater and then I switched it in my head. Okay, so let's talk about rainwater first. Is there any other way than just the barrels?
So you can fact you could potentially put something in your attic, for example. If you have the room, you just need to make sure you empty it every year, right? And you need to make sure your roof can hold the weight of that barrel. We were looking into that on a house that we're in the process of designing and rebuilding this year. We were thinking about doing it above their garage. Um, since you're on city water, I think catching rainwater somehow makes a lot of sense. If you're out in the country and you're on the well, you're pulling water from the ground anyways. So, maybe you put a rain barrel on just if you want the convenience of it, like something close to your garden, maybe. Uh, in this case, where we're building this other house, it's out in the country, so they're on well and septic to begin
Right.
with.
Yeah. No, that makes more sense. Yeah, it makes more sense.
So yeah, there are some options. I haven't looked into it a lot. We haven't had a lot of people ask about it. Same with gray water. From what I understand, it's a maintenance thing, right? So a lot of people like the idea of gray water, but then when they see gray water in their toilet, because it is gray, you know what I mean? Like it's not as sexy. It doesn't look as sexy as it sounds.
Well, when I was a kid, I'm sure they still have this product. They would put blue chemis in it, so the water would all be blue, and it felt fantastic when I was a kid. Going, oh, it's so clean.
Oh yeah, my dad always had those. I had an Airbnb guest who didn't know, like he was new to the country, and he thought that he was supposed to flush it down the toilet. So he tried to flush it down the toilet, and it clogged the toilet, and that was like just a disaster. And I was like, anyways. Those things are meant to like sit in water for a long time. Who knows? Who knows what he just put into the septic at that point? I don't even know what it was made out of.
Yeah, that's interesting about putting the water in the attic. I would assume that no insurance company would cover that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I never actually thought of that.
That's my real estate. All of a sudden, my real estate went, okay. Because insurance companies over the last 15 years in the business, they've been going from easy going to tightening up. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's their business. They have the right to do so, but it's really changed a lot in 15 years. Yeah. But that's all my questions so far that I have. Hopefully I'm going to be starting this summer. It was supposed to be started before the COVID, but no one was working. So, maybe now I can get some contractors to come help me out.
Well, hopefully there's some contractors in your area that can help out. We can't work on the Quebec side, but
yeah, I know. I'd love. There's a few around. I've done research that claim to be, and I've interviewed them and talked to them, and their knowledge is slim. Their big thing is, we bring things to the eco center, and we're gonna try and find alternative products, but that's as far as they've been telling me. So if there's anybody out there listening who is in the Montreal and are green builders, and let me know. I'm interested.
Well, this has been fun, switching the roles around a little bit. I'm not used to being the one, well, not in an interview setting sort of thing, right? I get questioned all the time with clients and homeowners, but a little bit different. So do you have any parting words of advice or asks of the viewers and listeners, because we're going to post this on our podcast as well?
Well, I guess it's to follow my passion. And, I think we're reaching a new stage of the planet and in our lives that we really have to become more conscious and more considerate, because this is our home. It's our air that we breathe, and we are what we make of it. So do your best. Put it in the forefront of your mind that whatever you shop, make sure it's environmental, that it's, stay away from the chemicals as much as you can. Take on maybe one thing a week or one thing a month and make it a habit. Every small little bit makes a huge difference.
Yeah, because to some extent, we've all made small little baby steps recently, and Mother Nature's very much appreciating it. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? I know you have jollygreenhomes.com. Is there any other website or way that you'd recommend people to reach out to you, maybe if they're looking to sell, if they're on the Quebec side?
Yeah, so my website, Montreal-realestate.ca. I've had it since 2006, and that's you'll find over 300 articles, tons of information, whether you're a greenie, an investor, a home buyer or seller, tons of information. It's the best way to get a hold of me. Montreal-realestate.ca.
Love it. And also, for everyone listening, we are in the process of making the Conscious Builder Academy. And if you want to stay up to date on stuff like that, head to consciousbuilderacademy.com, and we'll be releasing updates through there. We got lots of stuff happening in the background. So, Jennifer, thank you so much. This
Thanks,
has been
Casey.
fun.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for listening.